I tried a bunch of easy crochet plushie tutorials from YouTube to see which ones are actually beginner friendly. Because when you search for beginner amigurumi or easy crochet plushies, everything looks cute, everything looks simple, but not every easy project is a good first project. Some tutorials are perfect if you have never made amigurumi before. Some are beginner friendly, but only after you already understand the basics. And some look simple, but then suddenly you are sewing tiny legs, trying to place the eyes evenly, or wondering why your plushie looks slightly cursed. So, in this video I'm going to show you the projects I tested, what I liked, what I struggled with, and which ones I would actually recommend if you are just starting. I'm not ranking them from best to worst, I'm ranking them more by beginner friendliness, from the easiest ones to the projects that need a little bit more experience. And of course, this is just my personal experience following these tutorials. Let's start probably with the smallest and most addictive one. The first project is the 2-minute heart. And honestly, with this one, the number of views already kind of speaks for itself. This one is one of those tutorials that almost everyone has seen if they've searched for quick crochet hearts. Even though it uses double crochet and even triple crochet stitches, I think this tutorial is great for beginners. The video is very clear, very visual, and the project is small enough that it does not feel overwhelming. You are not committing to a huge plushie, you are just making a tiny heart. And I have to say, this one is seriously addictive. I made so many of these hearts, I even turned some of them into keychains because they are quick, cute, and perfect for using up little bits of yarns. Now, did my first heart take 2 minutes? No, absolutely not. It took me longer. But after making a few of them, your hands start to memorize the steps, and then it really does become very fast. So this is definitely one I would recommend trying, especially if you want a small beginner-friendly project where you get a finished result almost immediately. Next, I tried the Bumblebee, and I feel like this is probably one of the most popular beginner amigurumi projects ever. If you have ever searched for easy crochet plushies or beginner amigurumi patterns, you have probably seen this bee somewhere. It is kind of everywhere, and honestly, I understand why. This one is simple enough to be a first amigurumi project. There are a few stitches that might sound a little scary if you are brand new, like half double crochet and double crochet, but in the tutorial they are explained clearly, so I do not think that should stop you. And the biggest advantage is that there is very little sewing. You only need to sew on the wings. That makes the whole project feel much less overwhelming because sewing parts together is often the moment where beginner plushies start to go wrong. So, compared to some of the other projects I tested, I would say the Bumblebee is much more first project friendly. It is cute, recognizable, beginner friendly, and you do not have to attach a lot of tiny pieces. I also have one small tip for beginners, especially if you want to make the same project more than once. When you follow a video tutorial for the first time, the video is super helpful because you can see every step, but if you want to come back to the project later and make more pieces, maybe for gifts, keychains, or even for a craft market, it can get really annoying to click through the whole video again and again, because once you have already made the project, you usually do not need the full explanation anymore. You just need the written steps. So, what I like to do is keep a little crochet notebook. When I test a tutorial and I know I might want to make that project again, I write down my own notes for personal use. The next time I don't have to search through the video, I just open my notebook, check the steps, and I can start crocheting much faster. Just make sure you respect the original creator's pattern and do not share or sell someone else's written instructions. But for your own personal notes, this can save so much time. Okay, next is the star. This one is also definitely beginner friendly. The finished star is really cute and the construction is quite simple. First, you crochet the basic circle in the middle, and then you crochet in the points of the stern around it. So the idea is not complicated at all, and I think beginners can absolutely make this. The only thing I would really pay attention to is the part when you go back down each point. I would recommend actually watching the video closely here, not just listening to the instructions, because you want to see exactly where the creator inserts the hook and which loops she uses. This is one of those small details that can change how clean the final shape looks. But overall, I think the star is a very nice beginner project. It is cute, simple, and great if you want to make something small but still decorative. After that, I tried the big heart. This one is also beginner friendly, but it has one construction step that might look a little confusing at first. You first crochet the two top parts of the heart separately, then you join them together, and after that you continue crocheting down to shape the bottom of the heart. So, I think the most confusing part for a beginner could be exactly that joining step, connecting the two heart bumps together and making sure you continue in the right direction. But in this tutorial, I think that part was explained very clearly and visually. So even though it could look intimidating at first, it was not actually that hard to follow. For me, the big heart is a good beginner project. Maybe not the absolute easiest one, because you do have the joining moment, but the tutorial explains it well enough that I would still recommend it for beginners. Next, I tried the turtle, and this one was honestly one of my favorites. The tutorial was really good, and the final plushie looks so much more complicated than actually is. That is probably the best thing about this project. It looks very impressive, but the construction is still beginner friendly. The only slightly tricky part is where the shell transitions into the body, because you crochet one round only into the back loops. So this is one of those moments where you really need to place your stitch marker correctly and pay attention to the tutorial. But if you follow the instructions carefully, I do not think this should be a big problem. Another thing I really liked is that there are tutorials for different turtle sizes, so you can make a tiny one, a bigger one, or choose the version that fits what you want. So overall, I think the turtle is a great beginner project. It is simple, cute, very effective, and it gives you that feeling of making something that looks much more advanced than it actually is. If you want a beginner project with a really nice wow effect, this is one of my favorites. Next, I tried a Loaf Cat, basically a little bread loaf cat, and I absolutely love this one. I think this is such a cute project and the final result is adorable, but I would not recommend it as your very first amigurumi project, and the reason is pretty simple. Some parts of the tutorial are not completely exact because the placement of the little legs or ears can depend on your stitch tension. If you crochet tighter or looser, the exact number of stitches might not place everything perfectly symmetrically. So you may need to adjust the position a little bit and use your own judgment to make sure the legs and ears look even. That is not a big problem if you already have some crochet experience, but if you have never crocheted before, I would first choose a project that is more exact, where every step is clearly counted for you. After that, I would absolutely try this cat, because it is really worth it. Also, this is a very little sewing. You only sew on the tail, so even though this is not completely no-sew, the sewing part is very minimal. So overall, I love the Loaf Cat. I would just place it in the category of beginner-friendly, but better after you have already made at least one of two easier projects. Next, I tried the little dinosaur. This one surprised me a bit. It looks like a very simple beginner project, and in many ways it is. The shapes are not complicated, the result is really cute, and if you already understand the basics of amigurumi, you can definitely make it. But I would not recommend this as your very first crochet plushie. The reason is that there is quite a lot of sewing. You have to attach the legs, the arms and other little parts, and there are also a few extra stitches you need to make so the body looks more symmetrical. So for me, this is beginner friendly, but not first project friendly. If you already made something like the turtle and you were okay with that, then I think you can handle the dinosaur too. But if you are holding a crochet hook for the first time, I would start with something with less sewing. And the last project I tested was this cute bunny. And this is where I had a slightly different experience. The finished bunny is adorable, but I personally struggled a bit with the way the tutorial was written or explained. And this might be just a personal preference because everyone reads patterns differently. But for example, instead of saying one single crochet in the next 5 stitches, I personally find it clearer when it is written as 5 single crochet stitches. Or instead of increase in the next 4 stitches, I would normally say 4 increases. So the pattern itself was not impossible, but for me, some instructions felt less intuitive than they could be. The bigger issue for me was that some of the most important beginner steps were not explained in enough detail. For example, attaching the eyes was not very clear, and especially embroidering the nose. And with Amigurumi, the face can completely change the final result. I also missed more guidance on how to sew everything together. For me, that was probably the most problematic part. I actually had to undo the head and make it again because I was not happy with how it looked. And this is maybe something I notice more because when I make tutorials, I try to slow down exactly in the places where beginners usually get stuck. So when those problem areas are skipped or only shown quickly, I immediately notice it. I also checked the comments under the tutorial and they were quite mixed. Some people were mentioning similar problems, so I do not think I was the only one who found some parts confusing. So I would say this. If you already know Amigurumi basics or if you have already made a few plushies before, this can be a great project. But if this is your very first Amigurumi, I think the missing details could be frustrating. The bunny is cute, but I would not put it in the best first project category. So after testing all of these tutorials, here is how I would personally choose them. If you want something tiny, quick and addictive, try the 2-minute heart. If you want your first real Amigurumi plushie, I would probably choose the Bumblebee. If you want something small and decorative, the star is a very nice option. If you want to learn how to join parts together but still keep it beginner friendly, try the big heart. If you want a project that looks more advanced than it actually is, I would choose the turtle. If you already made 1 or 2 beginner projects and you want something really cute with a very little sewing, try the Loaf Cat. If you are ready for more sewing, then the Dinosaur is a good next step. And if you already understand Amigurumi basics and do not mind figuring out some details yourself, then you can try the cute bunny. My biggest takeaway from this whole test is that easy does not always mean good as a first project. Sometimes a pattern is easy, but it still has a lot of sewing. Sometimes the crochet part is simple, but the face or the assembly is not explained enough. And sometimes a project looks complicated, but the tutorial is so clear that it becomes very beginner friendly. So if you are just starting with crochet plushies, I would not only look at how cute the final project is, I would also look at how much sewing there is, whether the tutorial shows the tricky parts clearly, and whether the pattern is exact enough that you do not have to guess too much. Because the right first project can make you feel like, yes, I can do this. And the wrong first project can make you think you are bad at crochet, even when the problem is just that the tutorial was not ideal for a complete beginner. So I hope this video helps you choose your first or next crochet plushie project. I will also leave links to all the tutorials I followed in the video description, so if you like any of these projects, you can easily find the original videos and try them too. Let me know in the comments which one you would try first, or if you have another beginner Amigurumi tutorial that you think I should test next.